recorded live right here in Little Rock, Arkansas. It's time again for Larry's Rants, Raves, and Reviews. And now, here's Larry.
Well, folks, I can tell you, do not shut this podcast off, because if you do, you're going to miss a great show. Yep. Great show. We have a very special guest here today with us to record this, because he's the guy that's got all the knowledge. Randy and I are just going to sit back and learn a whole lot.
Yeah.
Randy, I'll tell you what really happened is Randy Sam sent me a link to a like an hour and a half YouTube video, and I was just blown away. I mean, seriously, the information that we're getting ready to share with our listeners, I've seen part of it on a YouTube channel, and I'm telling you, it was fabulous.
Yeah.
Folks, what you don't realize is here in Arkansas, we have a problem. I call it the Arkansas prison fiasco. We're trying and wanting to build a new 3,000 bed prison. And I think there was multiple locations and everything. And then all of a sudden, Franklin County jumped up, and it's in a little nowhere place, a lot of farmland, and it's beautiful country. I mean, it's rural Arkansas, but I'm telling you, I just don't understand why even we would give it a thought. And Randy brought it up on one of his podcast with us. And so we're going to introduce to you Adam Watson. Adam, welcome to the show. We are thrilled that you're here to record with us.
Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
You're the one that had a couple of hour drive to get over here to Little Rock and get in our studio. And so we want to sincerely say thank you, because you seem to be the expert on what is going on, and we're going to cut you loose and let you give us all the details. Just to set this up, I watched a YouTube video from Gravel and Grit, which I believe you say is your 501c4 nonprofit organization, and you were in front of a committee and you were blowing their minds. And because you knew so much and surprised them with so much. And somehow I got over on the 3-hour version. And after you were done and sat down, the people that was for the other side got up and I think blew the committee's mind, because they knew so little, or was willing to give out so little information, one or the other. So, Adam, thank you for again coming today. But I've got to tell you, this Franklin County prison thing has just really blown my mind. So I'm going to shut up here and ask you to just jump in wherever you want, and we'll ask questions and we'll talk wherever we can.
Sure. So I'd be remiss to take credit for all of this. I have a great team behind me at Gravel and Grit.
Okay.
Natalie Cadena, that is our executive director and was there presenting with me.
Yes.
Just some fantastic folks from the community, from across the political spectrum. Everybody just, this got dropped in our laps, and the whole community came together and said, who cares about anything? Let's roll up our sleeves and figure out what we can do. Yeah. And it's a real testament to their kind of grit, and which is reflected in our nonprofit's name. So, for anybody that's not aware, this JPR hearing, which is Joint Performance Review, which is the video you're referencing, was not by any means the first step in this process. It was actually almost a year after the prison was announced. So there was a lot leading up to that, and we didn't come in there cold and unprepared and unstudied, as I think is reflected in the presentation that we gave.
No, you were well organized. You were a machine. So
well, and that's a testament to our commitment to getting the facts and putting them into not a story, but a way that people can follow front to back what's gone on with this thing and what the problems are. As I'm sure Randy mentioned to y'all when he was here, this was dropped on Franklin County without any kind of due process or consideration for what
Franklin County wasn't even on the list at one point, correct?
Well, it was never really on the list.
Okay.
I mean, you know, we've done extensive FOIA work, and that's where all of this information comes from. This isn't, you know, Googling and making assumptions. This is the government's own records that we've just poured through hundreds of thousands of pages at this point to figure out what actually happened. And no, Franklin County was never on the list. So through that, the documents that we got, we found, you know, short lists of what they were looking at when they had, you know, 10 properties that they were looking at, when that got narrowed down to 5, why they were crossing certain properties off the list. And Franklin County was just never a part of that conversation until an intern found it, I believe, 3 weeks before they signed the contract to purchase the land. And as soon as that discovery was made of the listing, all the other properties just disappeared.
Within 3 weeks.
Within 3
and
weeks.
how long, I call it doing their due diligence. How long did they do their due diligence about the other properties? Do you know?
Well, you know, I don't know that full due diligence was ever done on the other properties. It felt like they were mid-process.
Okay.
When they made the decision to pull the plug on those and go with Franklin County.
Okay.
And whether that's because, you know, they thought they weren't a great fit, or they had found something that said, you know, this isn't necessarily right. But we do know that they were crossing things off. You know, for instance, and I know they refer to this property as Northwest Arkansas. It's really not. It's the River Valley. But there were properties that they were looking at in Northwest Arkansas that they, you know, drew a line through and wrote politics. We can't do it up there. So that was some of the due diligence, quote unquote, that they were doing. And then as far as due diligence on the Franklin County property, like I said, about 21 days from finding the online listing to signing the contract. That's not a lot of time.
And for our listeners, we're not saying that people in Franklin County is against a prison just because it's a prison and we don't want one close by. We cannot figure out why. All you're saying is folks, these are the things that we have to look at and the reasons why we put a prison where we do. And none of them, as you said on your video before, check the box. Let's kind of go through what are some of the things that we're supposed to be doing our due diligence on and whether they check the box or not, kind of like you did on the video.
Sure. So Randy's a builder.
There you go.
You know.
He's getting his commercial license and he wants a slice of this
Friday.
There you go. So this may help. This may help if you have to take a test or something.
We may have a splitting of the ways here on our.
But then, you know, like I mentioned to you before we started, I was a commercial real estate paralegal for a long time. So I'm familiar with looking at this from the perspective of, you know, it's just a capital improvement project. Don't think of it as a prison. Think of it as just anything else the state may want to build at an industrial kind of level. And what are the things that you need to check off your list to make sure that where you're siting it is adequate for the project that you're going to be building? So utilities, that's a big thing. Can you staff the ultimate project? Is there reasonable access? With a prison specifically, is there community acceptance? You know, that was a big thing that they talked about when this idea first came up, is we have to put this somewhere that the community will accept it, so we don't end up in the situation that we're in right now.
Okay.
And you know, I think in the presentation we break down utilities into water, electric, cell service.
Yeah.
All of these things, that a lot goes in to building this type of facility, which, you know, importantly, at the end of the day, is going to be the size of a city. It's 3,000 inmates and 800 staff. The closest town within, you know, a dozen or more miles is about 2,800 folks. So this is very much not only doing due diligence to go build a gas station on the side of a mountain. This is building a city on the side of a mountain.
Right.
And, you know, if you don't have everything planned to a T before you pick that site, you know, our contention is you don't have any business spending taxpayer money going ahead with the purchase and not having a plan to follow through with it.
So you're saying 3,000 prisoners and how many on staff?
800.
800 on staff.
grief.
So where are you going to find 800 people looking for a job out of, what'd you say, 2,500 people in the closest town?
Right. And that, that's one of the big arguments that we made is workforce considerations, because the unemployment figures in our area are some of the lowest in the state. And to expect that folks are going to be driving, over an hour one way to work in this type of environment, which is not exceedingly pleasant, I think it's kind of a farce. And then when you couple that with the kind of pervasive staffing shortages around the state at other state carceral facilities, there's just no conceivable way that you can adequately staff this size of facility. And I don't think that that's a Franklin County specific issue. I think building a 3,000 bed mega prison, that's one of the biggest carceral facilities in the United States, let alone Arkansas. I don't think you could staff that if you built it in the middle of Little Rock, much less on the side of a mountain out in Franklin County.
That's a big statement.
It is. And, there's a lot of, we've tried to be inordinately careful about not being the people that just complain about this thing and talk about what reasonable solutions might be and what alternatives might be. And none of those include, hey, just make this somebody else's problem and put it in their backyard instead, specifically because we don't think that this project can be successful anywhere in the state. If you're looking at building this many beds, if that is ultimately the decision that the state, is not willing to back off from, then they need to break this into smaller facilities. And they need to look at expanding what we have instead of building from scratch.
Okay, brings me to my question, and I should have done my homework, and I apologize.
No,
I didn't.
don't. That's why we're here.
But how many prisons are there in the state of Arkansas?
That's a good question. I actually don't know off the top of my head. I think there's a dozen or so.
Okay. So wouldn't it make more sense to just build a wing on to each of those and house another 500 prisoners at those?
Right, which is one of the first arguments that we made, and that's largely based on same thing you just did. Is doesn't that just colloquially make more sense? Doesn't that just logically make more sense?
Well, common sense is not common.
Sure,
but,
sure. And the pushback and the argument that we've gotten from the state in that is that, well, we do have this pervasive staffing shortage, and if we add more beds, we don't have the people to staff them. I think what's interesting about that is, number one, the state recently instituted a pay hike for correctional officers, which has put a significant dent in the staffing shortages around the state at these facilities. But there's kind of this forked argument from the state is they're telling Franklin County, hey, this is going to be the biggest economic boon that your county's ever gotten. You should be grateful for the investment opportunity. But at the same time, they're saying we can't staff the facilities that we already have because in every single county that has a state carceral facility, they're experiencing rampant population decline and can't find enough people to work at these places. So both of those things can't be true, right? You can't tell us that it'll be the best thing that's ever happened to us while it's simultaneously damaging every other county that has one.
Well, and don't you feel like there's a lot of people, you talk about community acceptance, there's a lot of people that live there because they want a rural lifestyle.
And that's what got everybody up in arms to begin with. I think there's this negativity associated with a NIMBYism argument and that, well, we have to have this somewhere, nobody's going to want it, you pulled the short straw. But at the same time, there's phases to this argument. At the end of the day, sure, nobody wants to live next door to a prison. But if you look around the state, there's no carceral facility that exists in the specific circumstances of the site that they picked in Franklin County. It literally will share a fence with 29 different families. That's not the case when you go buy 10,000 acres in the Delta and put it right in the middle of it. It's just a wildly different scenario. The entrance is a school bus stop, literally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of merit to NIMBYism takes a lot of heat as being inherently negative or inherently not a good argument. But I think there's a lot of merit to, some of these family farmers that are going to share a fence with this facility are 6th, 7th, 8th generation Arkansans that have built their entire lives here. They're good, hardworking people.
Right.
And they live out there for a reason. Like you said, they like to see the stars at night. They like the peace and quiet. They like nobody bothering them.
And if I flip the coin, I've got to say that, okay, community acceptance, you can only have so much power in that particular thing. Kind of get over yourself. If Arkansas is ever going to grow and make something of themselves, community acceptance can only hold so much weight with me. But on the flip side, I'm being compassionate, because if I'm sitting out there on 10 or 15 acres and I've got me a nice private lake or a pond and I've been enjoying my lifestyle and everything, do I want all of that mess next to me? Probably not.
Well, and I certainly don't think you want it without at least being given the consideration of the conversation, right? I mean, part of the attempt, I think, to combat the NIMBYism is the position that you want to build it in Franklin County. If this is the county it's got to be in, fine. We'll help you find a better spot.
Right.
This specific spot is the worst possible choice that you could have made.
It's kind of like, I'd like to live on a lake, but I don't live on a lake, because you could build $1 million home on the lake and right next to it, somebody puts a double wide motorhome in there.
Sure.
And I'm like, I can't control it. So
well, and it's the blessing and the curse of living in the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to do something, you do it. And that's part of the beauty of the freedom to be there. But at the same time, you expect good stewardship by your neighbors. And typically these are people that you've known for those.
Well, you expect good stewardship from your government, even though we're learning not to. And this is not good stewardship as far as everything that I have seen and heard. So even if you built the thing, even if the community said, okay, we're going to accept it, and built it, where is that workforce? If you're looking for 800 people, where are you going to hire them from? And number two, where are they going to live? There is not housing for 800 people.
And that's part of the community complaint, right? Is that this is not just a prison, which the state will swear up and down, oh, you won't even notice it's there. It's going to be behind a ridge line. You won't see it. You won't notice the traffic, which we don't even need to go there. But it's not just a prison. It's housing, it's highway expansion, it's utility expansion. It's all of these things that come with building an entire city on the side of a mountain.
Okay.
So all of that development stretches far beyond just those, 29 families that are at the epicenter. There's 605 homes in a 5-mile radius. There's the town of 2,300 10 minutes away. There's my house 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of stretching out from that area is going to get impacted. And that's more especially true depending on when and if and how they ever find water for this thing. I mean, that's, we still live in a world where that's a scarce resource. And, that can be really damaging if that's altered and access to that vital resources.
Let's drill down through a couple of these things. You just brought it up, water. So I understand there was not a water study, and yet there's supposed to be. So we build the prison. Where's the water coming from?
Right. Well, and I think you need water even just to build something, right? You can't just start building without a plan. And that's the travesty of where we're at. There's no plan for this. And as an overarching theme, I think that's the worst thing that's happened here. But for water specifically, the whole area is on a rural water system. They don't produce water, they transport water. They buy water from Ozark, which is north of the river. So it's piped under the bridge into, holding towers and sent out to customers.
Okay.
They tell us that when we drip our faucets when it's cold, they kind of cross their fingers and pray overnight that we'll have enough water in the morning. When we look at their usage logs in hot days in August, end of summer, we're at 99.9999%. We're at capacity. I built a business when I moved up here, and I went to go get a new tap from the water system, and they said, "Oh, it's not a chicken house, is it?"
Oh, okay.
I said, "No. We'll need we need to flush toilets and wash hands. It's no big deal."
Well, let me ask you this: who was it, and why did they select this site? Why was it, and who did it? What's the rub behind that? What's under the rock?
Yeah, and I think the consummate question that we can't answer is why. Why, not only why this site, but why the intense pressure to stay at this site, despite everything that we
always say around here, look at the money, or look for the money. Where's the money at?
Well,
I don't want to put you on the spot, but that's what we always say.
Randy's favorite saying is follow the money.
You follow the money. Whenever we have a problem or look at something, and we always say follow the money, and it goes back to somebody, something, some organization, or some person.
And that's been a very frequent refrain for all of our followers as well. And I actually have an article, if you want to Google "follow the money, gravel and grit," you can find that, and it talks about tracing all of this through. So, we're very careful not to speculate, because, like I was saying earlier,
we love to speculate.
Well, then, in the vein of speculation, one of our suspicions has been, we can't find an objective reason that you would pick this property for a successful carceral facility, right? So, if you follow that logic, well, what if it's not intended to be successful? What if it is intended to fail, so that the government has an excuse to reprivatize the carceral system in Arkansas? And that is supported when you follow the money and see that CoreCivic, who is the largest private prison company in the world, is the governor's PAC's biggest donor.
Yeah, okay. That's a very interesting thought.
It is. And then, that's something that came up last summer before all of this, and we didn't talk about that in the hearing, again, because we're under oath. We want to be present the facts as we know them, and that's speculation.
We like a good conspiracy theory around here. So.
Well, when you so when you look at where it's at now, and if y'all followed the news about the governor's recent appointments to the Board of Corrections, and then their subsequent kind of takeover of the Board of Corrections, that's a rubber stamp board now. It's no longer an independent board that runs our correction system.
And is that the guy from Oklahoma that everybody's scratching their head saying?
Arizona, Joe Porfiry.
Arizona. Yeah.
No, this is a different bunch. So Jamie Barker was the governor's deputy chief of staff.
Okay.
Last week of December, he announced that he was leaving that role to become a named partner at Gilmore Davis, now Gilmore Davis Barker, very prominent lobbying firm in the state. And then the next week, the governor appointed him to the Board of Corrections. So the speculation that we've been thinking through is, if we get into fiscal session, which is coming up soon, and the legislature continues to refuse to fund this project from a state perspective, then is the plan B to go through the Board of Corrections and sign this over to a private prison building company, because it wouldn't require legislative approval. And we've seen the legislature sidestepped in this process before. They said no to funding 5 times in the last legislative session, and the governor said, we're going to do it anyway. Too bad.
Well, I think that was Randy Sam's point when he was on with us, is that there's a lot of dark money, one of his episodes, dark money that's being thrown at some of these Senate seats to try to get somebody in there that's going to be a rubber stamper and a yes. I think there was either 4 or 5 different ones that were definite no's on this, that a lot of dark money has been thrown there trying to get them in office to where they can turn that no into a yes.
Yeah, and that's been an interesting thought process too, because sitting here, when this is released, they will have already happened, but as we're recording, next Tuesday is the statewide primaries for all of those races. And even if those dark money interests are successful and oust the no votes, those senators would not take office for this upcoming fiscal session. They wouldn't take office until next January.
Okay.
So if that is a play specifically to get public funding for this project, then we're not looking at any movement until, spring of 27.
We'd just be kicking the can down the road and then pull the trigger on it.
Exactly. And that's part of what our argument has been, is like, if we are in this crisis situation with our correction system where overcrowding is rampant, sheriffs can't serve warrants, all of these things that they're saying necessitate building this new facility, then it's an urgent problem that we have. And we're just sitting on our hands not doing anything because we've picked this bad location and we can't move forward with the project. So if it is so urgent and the plan is literally to wait until spring of 27 to even get funding to get the ball rolling, we're in real trouble.
Now, how much is the quote unquote budget that has been thrown out for this prison?
So when the project was announced, it was $470 million.
$470 million.
Right. During the last legislative session,
Okay.
The governor sent a letter to the Joint Budget Committee saying, hey, create us an appropriation for, it was less than that, but with some already existing funding coupled with her appropriation request, it would have matched that $470 million figure.
Okay.
That was on a Thursday. Joint Budget said no. And they came back on Monday and said, hey, we've talked to our consultant from California that we hired. They gave us an updated budget. We'd like you to give us $825 million.
$825 million. Okay. And then I have heard a rumor from several guests, kind of offline, that we're looking at $1 billion.
I think easily. I mean, I think if you're reasonable about this, Randy, again, about cost overruns.
I'm glad I'm getting my contractor's license.
Gonna sign right up for this project. Hey, if there's $1 billion to go around, it's hard to blame you.
I know.
I want my cut when we, build this thing, Randy, and we'll go to Hawaii and live or something.
Build a bigger studio.
Screw the studio. Y'all are on your own.
Early in the process, we talked to some construction experts, just again, informally. And they said, if you want to do this, if you want to do it in that location, probably $1.5 billion.
Wow.
And then, come to find out, they actually paid for an internal study of, what's this going to cost? And that came back at $1.2 billion. So we were pretty dang close in our estimate. And I think that was summer of 23. So if you adjust that for today's dollars and cost escalations and inflation and all of that, I think 1.5 is a pretty fair estimate.
And don't you think that we could, as simple-minded as I am, okay, I'll throw it out there, couldn't you just already finished several wings on our current prisons at 500 beds? You would have already done 2023. This thing has been going on. So now we're 3 years after this project. We've spent millions of dollars getting it to this place. And as Randy Sams put it, I think pretty eloquently, he said we bought the land and we did one culvert.
Yeah.
And we spent $4 million.
Yeah.
I wonder what contractor did that. I could have done that.
Yeah, you could have.
I don't know it.
I'll put in a culvert for $1 million.
Well, and I think what makes that point even more emphatic is that the plug was pulled on a project to do exactly that. The $75 million in funding that this project currently does have, I know there's a lot in the news about, well, the legislature approved $75 million for it. That's patently false. The legislature approved $75 million and wrote the appropriation specifically for prison expansion in 2023.
Okay.
And that was, I wish the appropriation would have been written a little tighter, but that was specifically intended to build a 500-bed expansion at the Calico Rock unit, which is now the Benny Magnus unit. It's the only facility in the state that ADC can fully and regularly staff at 100%. And they would welcome the expansion. The $75 million was pegged to it, but I think the ultimate cost after they did the design and architecture and engineering, all of that's already been done. It's shovel ready. was $125 million for 525 beds. So if if I think we do the math in that video, but if you do that math, it's about half the per bed cost as building this brand new from scratch 3,000 bed mega prison. So to pull the plug on a project like that, shift that money over to this that's doing nothing. And even if, let's be honest, even if you started construction today, you're not going to be moving prisoners in there for years to come.
Well, and we understand that there was a young man, I think he's actually in his 20s, that bought the land for something like 1.2, 1.5 million and turned around and sold it to the state a couple of years later for $3 million.
Yeah, it was a 3-year turnaround, and they cleared just under $1 million in profit after paying off their mortgages on it. Wow. And then moved to Alaska.
Follow the money.
So follow the money, folks. I don't know whose pocket that's going into, but
that's a rabbit. Look, if there's a rabbit trail to follow, we followed it. That one hasn't turned anything up yet, but it does feel weird.
And I want our listeners to understand we're pretty progressive in business ideas.
Sure.
Okay, Randy and I think you probably are. We want our state to grow. Mm-hmm. We want Arkansas to be a better state,
right,
and have more population and do wonderful things and all of this. We want people's lives to prosper. But folks, we've got to do it the right way.
Right.
And it's got to make some sense.
No, we do. And I think to add to that, we're not somehow against public safety because we're against this project.
Yeah.
The response from Senate leadership and from the government has been, well, they're just a bunch of radical leftists that want to see criminals walking the street.
Yeah.
And number one, that, points to a bigger problem in our political rhetoric these days. But number two, it's just not the case. The biggest issue at the end of the day is that building beds is a Band-Aid. It doesn't solve the problem. You can't build yourself out of an overcrowding problem unless you stop the stream that's coming in.
Right.
So if we're kind of collectively agreeing that, hey, our carceral system needs $1 billion investment, $1.5 billion investment, well, let's build that emergency relief valve of these 525 beds that's ready to go, ready to start building. And if you just take $125 million off of that $1.5 billion that we need to spend, hey, all of a sudden you can make these robust investments in our mental health system, in pretrial services, and drug courts, and probation services, and reentry services. There's a ton of money to go around to fix what is the underlying problem.
Right.
And even looking at some of the bills that Senator King ran over the last legislative session as proposed alternatives for this, it was, better funding for our police officers so that we can stop crime at the front of it. Because the worst way to deal with crime is incarceration. Yeah. And it's the most expensive way. Mm-hmm. So I think to your point, yes, we all want Arkansas to grow and prosper and be a great, safe place to live. But you got to do it the right way, and you've got to do it in a way that accomplishes the goals that you're after.
Yeah. I totally agree. Well, I'll tell you what, we talked to Adam and said, hey, we want you to make this trip over here. And what we're going to do is 2 shows. And so we're going to wrap up part 1 here, and we're going to come back. And I've got to give Adam a pep talk before we come back on part 2, Randy. I think he's holding back a little bit of the junk.
I think so.
And so I gotta tell him, dude, you got to unleash some of this on us. And we're going to drill down a little bit tighter. And there's some things that I want to drill down and talk about, because folks, again, we're not against this because of the community acceptance. We're against it because it just doesn't make sense. Now, that's with sense with an S and sense with a C.
Both.
I'm telling you, it doesn't make sense. Mm-mm. And I would even do this. Right now, I would invite, if anybody knows Governor Huckabee, we would love to have you on this show. And I would put Adam on the spot and say, we'll make room for both of you, and we'll come to the table, and we'll have Governor Sanders. We'll have her come, Adam, we'll have you come, and Randy and I, it'll be off 4, and we'll just have a pleasant conversation like we are right now. And we'd love to know why this is really happening in this county.
Yeah.
Because if you can make sense of this,
let us know.
let us know, and we'll accept it.
Right.
But until then, folks, well, I hope you'll tune back in, because tomorrow is part 2 of this Arkansas prison fiasco, and we're going to drill down a little bit more and try to figure out how can we make sense of this, or where is everything going. So, folks, tune back in, and we'll have. We hope that you will have a great day.